Hey everyone, how's it going today? And welcome to another episode. So the story to today's video is really inspired and about the fact that, as some of you guys probably already know by now, and we talked about it in a previous video, which I'm going to put at the end of this video, which is literally just called Horrible Job Market, Why It Feels So Impossible to Get a Job Right Now, is really about the fact that there are obviously a lot of people right now that are unemployed in our country. You might be unemployed, feel free to drop a comment down below. But the idea really is that we are hustling very, very hard right now in a horrible job market that currently exists, with how difficult it is to find a job and people getting laid off. But on another hand, we also have a situation where there's a lot of people that are actually employed, but the problem is that they're either thinking about leaving, or at the very least, they just don't want to work anymore. This could be maybe because they are working a job and they know they have to work that job in order to be able to pay bills and make ends meet, because at the end of the day, that's very, very important. But they maybe don't like their jobs very much and are just doing the bare minimum, or at the very least just want to leave. So at today's video, what I really want to talk about is pretty much exactly just about that. Taking an exploration to the other side of the story and talking about why some people just no longer want to work the 40-hour work week anymore, and maybe sharing this even more specifically if you have seen other videos about this, from just my personal experiences as well. So there's going to be a little bit of a personal touch to today's video that you might not be able to get in other resources. So hopefully you guys will enjoy that. If you guys do, remember to smash the like button, consider subscribing, hitting the bell, feel free to leave a comment. And with that being said, let's just get this video started. So the first reason that a lot of people are thinking about leaving their jobs today and quitting the 40-hour work week, so they're thinking about either leaving their jobs or at the very least just doing the absolute bare minimum, is really because a lot of people, in my personal opinion, are facing a lot of betrayal, or at the very least they feel very, very betrayed by the system. And it's because it is very, very well known today that one of the biggest differences between today and what was the case more than 40 years ago is that there's just not a lot of loyalty in the workforce anymore. Back 40 years ago, it was much more probable that someone was going to stay with the company a lot more long term. But today, on the other hand, in order to try to build up one's career, it is very well known that strategically you have to be prepared to be able to bounce jobs, not necessarily like every month per se, but at the very least maybe every couple of years. But the bigger reason why, and then what I really want to explore and talk about, is really because of the lack of loyalty and because of a lot of the betrayal I think a lot of people are facing, especially in the last couple of years, specifically because of the unemployment situation and because of the layoffs that have happened recently. It is a very, very well-known fact that a lot of people are now starting to recognize that because of all of the heavy layoffs, and in most cases layoffs that have happened for uncontrollable reasons, or for reasons that were just kind of, we'll just say BS reasons, but that happened anyway at the end of the day. So examples of this are that there's a lot of people that maybe faced favoritism. Feel free to comment down if you have any stories that you want to share about anything at all that we talk about. But some people may have faced favoritism, some people faced nepotism, and some people just faced a very horrible job market situation where maybe their company was just not doing very well. And because of that reason, because of the struggle in business, or maybe they overhired for all sorts of reasons, but one thing, the common denominator, is for reasons that are uncontrollable. So reasons that are not related to their fault. It's not because of poor performance or anything like that. They were let go, and they were basically just dropped from their job for just all sorts of reasons. And this is the part that I want to share, maybe a personal anecdote and story, is that because several years ago, way back when I worked in the engineering world, and I've made a lot of videos about this, so definitely feel free to check out those videos about why I left the engineering workforce. But back in the day, when I was working one of my very early corporate jobs, as some of you may or may not know, hey, welcome. If you guys are brand new here, maybe consider subscribing. But the idea really is that back then, when I was working my corporate job, one of the things that I really faced was very, very intense favoritism. And it came to a point when they were doing company reviews, so they were reviewing, what all of the different employees and how they were performing. I think that because of a lot of the favoritism, because it was never communicated clearly, but the speculation at that time was because of favoritism, I was let go, and I was just dropped from my job very, very suddenly. despite the fact that I actually loved my job too. And that's the wild thing. You know, there were a lot of people in my former corporate job that really hated their job. They did the bare minimum. They barely put much effort, but because of all sorts of reasons, maybe likely favoritism, they were able to keep their jobs. On my hand, on the other hand, I actually really loved my job, or at the very least, loved the craft of my job. I didn't like the corporate atmosphere. I didn't like the social scene at times. I didn't like certain aspects of the job, but the craft of practicing the job, I loved it really, really much. But at the same time, you know, despite the fact that there was passion, performance, energy, effort, everything putting, you know, blood, sweat, soul, and I don't know, everything into it, I was the one dropped. And so it's stuff like that in situations where you feel very, very betrayed about like what happened in the workforce that causes a lot of people to no longer want to work anymore. And I think that's really going to be the first point that I really want to make in today's video. Now, the second point that I really want to make in today's video is really about the other reason why a lot of people, in my personal opinion, want to leave their job, or at the very least, just don't want to work the 40-hour work week, is because of the lack of work-life flexibility and control and efficiency. And this one is really, really important because we are living in a very, very technological world today. It is very possible that we can do the same exact amount of work, but accomplish that amount of work in less time. So what used to maybe take, you know, maybe 60 years ago, what used to take 40 hours to complete, you can now often do for only about 20 hours. But the problem is that because of the nature of corporate America, and because of the fact that we all have to really be able to focus and look like we're productive, even if we're not actually productive, but we have to appear productive to our bosses and our managers, what really ends up happening is that in many cases, the reward that you get for being able to accomplish your job early, in some cases, it is to be able to leave work early. But in most cases today, it's that your reward for being able to complete your job in less time is being rewarded by having just more work. In other words, you are being rewarded for completing your work by being given even more work to complete in order to be productive and to maximize efficiency and everything going on. So why this is related is that because when you have that kind of mindset and mentality that, you know, you're hired for a particular task and then you complete that task and now you're given even more tasks, this is a very, very easy recipe to lead to a lot of very, very heavy burnout. So when you have that situation between the burnout, the hours, the work-life balance, the work-life flexibility, the work-life efficiency, that's what's going to lead a lot of people to just not want to work the 40-hour work week anymore. They want to work less hours but get the same pay, but for good reasons, because again, they're still completing their work. It's not like they're abandoning their work. They're still completing their work, but they just don't feel that they're being utilized as efficiently as they could be. And I think it's that because of that reason, a lot of people don't want to work the 40-hour work week because of that particular reason. And, you know, the layoffs and everything like that we've already mentioned definitely just does not help the situation at all. Now, the next thing that I really, really want to talk about is probably going to be an extension of some of the things that I've talked about in former videos as well. And it's that the reason why there's also a lot of people that don't want to work the 40-hour work week anymore has to do with, and this is a little bit more of a sensitive topic, so you definitely have to hear it out. It has to do with the people. And it's that because there are some people that love the coworkers they work with, which is really awesome. I love the coworkers that I worked with for the most part. There were sometimes we had disagreements, but for the most part, you know, I like to think that we got along relatively well. But then there's a lot of people that just do not like their coworkers or their managers or their bosses, or there's just some kind of conflict of interest. And I think this is the part that I kind of related to a lot in my early days when I was working in my own corporate job, is that because a lot of times when you work in corporate America, you don't always have control over the people that you work with. So it's very, very common to find situations where you just sometimes maybe don't get along with the people. At the very very least, if it has to do with people outside of the workforce related environment, because you still have to come to work with them at the end of the day. You still have to show up on a daily basis. You have to interact with these people. So if you feel that you cannot click with the culture of the people, then this is not going to be a good position to be in. It's that because it's going to make it very difficult to click on a chemistry level with the coworkers that you're working with, which also means, as we just mentioned in the first point, is that you're also more likely now to have favoritism work against you. Because if you can't work with your coworkers, then it's likely that they're going to perceive you as different. And if they see you as different, but not in a positive different way, they may single you out, and you might end up being the first person to get laid off, the person that doesn't get the promotion, the person that gets overlooked for a lot of opportunities because of that reason. And I related to that a lot because back in my early days when I was working in corporate America, I loved the coworkers that I worked with for the most part, but one of the problems I felt was that a lot of the coworkers I had in my ex-industry, they were very, very conservative in every definition of that word. There was a very strong lack of diversity. There were not a lot of minorities, not a lot of people of color. There was not a lot of females. It was a 90% male industry, so it was an industry where people were very, very similar to each other, and they were a little bit cliquey. So if you didn't really click with the scene, it was very, very easy to get singled out, which is maybe the reason I got laid off at the end of the day. But again, this is maybe a story for another day, even though I already kind of mentioned it a little bit earlier in today's video. But the idea really behind it is that because when you don't click with a lot of these people on a social perspective, it can lead favoritism to work against you. And if that ends up happening, it's going to be a difficult position to be in, at the very least a difficult place to be able to build up your career. And that's what leads to a lot of people to start job hopping and putting in the bare minimum effort in order to try to survive and thrive in their career path. So that's really what I really want to mention. It's just, it really comes down to the people sometimes that you have to work with, and that this could be really either a hit situation or a miss situation, just depending on where you're currently at. Now, the next point that I really want to make, and maybe this might be the last point, but it's a very, very important point to hear out, is that there was a lot of research and a lot of articles that came out trying to survey to people what area of the job that they currently work in that they wish was better. And one of the biggest things that I think this is probably going to be the last point that we have to make, why a lot of people are putting in the bare minimum or just no longer want to work the job in, is because of everything related to one of the most important reasons that we are working is money. Money is very, very important. Obviously, money is not everything. There's a lot more to life than money, and we emphasize this despite the fact that we are a finance channel. But the idea really behind this point is that because money is one of those things, especially today, and why I say today is because our country today is facing very massive inflation. Things are getting very, very expensive. It's much harder to, afford a house. It's much harder to make a living. It's much harder to afford shelter and real estate. And because of all of these reasons, it's just that the need and necessity for money has become even greater than ever in our generation today than it has been in any other past generation because of how expensive everything has gotten. So when you are in these particular situations, a lot of people feel that they're just very, very underpaid. They're basically working a job, they're helping their boss make millions of dollars. Meanwhile, they're basically just getting paid at the bare minimum, just something that and on top of the high taxes, a lot of them, even when they are making a lot of money, they're taxed very highly so that they're losing a lot of money that they're making as well to the government. Now, the tax situation, that's probably going to be a video for another day that I want to talk about and touch up on. So maybe subscribe if you guys are brand new here and haven't done so, and huge thanks if you guys already have, is greatly appreciated. But the idea with the money situation is that, long story short, is just not enough for a lot of people. Many people are now working minimum wage, but minimum wage is just not enough to sustain. I speak as someone that works in minimum wage jobs in my early career when I was starting out, back when I was still a student. But today, it's a very different story. Things are a lot more expensive and money is a lot more necessary to sustain. So while it is true that money is not everything, it has become a very, very important topic that might be a little bit sensitive, but it is very important to talk about. And I think everyone has to be a lot more transparent about the money that they're making. They can try to keep it a little bit private because, again, it is a little bit of a private, sensitive topic, but they have to be a little bit transparent at the very least when they're talking about things like this online, on the internet, with their coworkers and everything like that. It's very, very important. And I think that probably is going to cap up the last thing that I really want to share in today's episode. So with that being said, if you guys made it to the end, thank you guys so much for watching all the way to the end. If you guys did, maybe leave a comment down below, like, subscribe, hit the bell. I'm going to leave some videos that you can watch talking about the job market, why it feels impossible to get a job. And with that being said, thank you guys so much for watching. As always, stay safe, stay well, and hope to see you guys next time. Thank you guys so much again.